Good morning, good day, and good evening. Welcome to Eat at Home, the newscast of the global food transformation. I'm Natalie Becker-Aakervik. Eat at Home is a series of broadcasts and interactive side sessions on food systems transformation toward the United Nations Food Systems Summit in 2021. Now, amidst a global pandemic, the flaws and the vulnerabilities in our global food systems have been urgently brought to our attention. Fixing food has never been more important. Over the next 4 episodes, we'll explore food production that protects and restores nature. We'll address how farmers and food producers can get a fair share. And finally, access to healthy and safe nutrition for all. Today, we'll focus on the shift to sustainable consumption. You can follow the online conversation on Twitter with the hashtag #FixFood. These are some of the stories we're going to serve you today. We'll visit the food market in Wuhan, where the global pandemic began almost a year ago. We'll hear from a group of youth standing up against unhealthy fast food, demanding action from political leaders. And then, as we look to science for answers, we'll meet a young man who shifted to the EAT-Lancet reference diet for a full half a year and lived to tell the tale. Later in the broadcast, join me as I sit down with Dr. Gunhild Stordalen, EAT's founder and executive chair, to discuss exactly why the upcoming UN Food Systems Summit will be a game changer. We'll stop by the Fab Lab for a quick science session with our resident scientist, Fabrice de Klerk. And after all, Eat at Home is all about food. Our studio chef, Emilie Nereng, will serve up healthy, sustainable, and of course, delicious food. And now, for our first segment of the day. Cities are where change begins. Today, half of the world's population live in cities, and what those billions of people put on their plates matters. Food already accounts for 13% of cities' greenhouse gas emissions. And as we'll see today, urban food systems are broken in many places. This year, we've witnessed how cities around the world have been at the front lines of the battle against COVID-19. How did that experience feel for those brave persons on the ground? First, we turn to where it all began in this short special report for Eat at Home from the city of Wuhan. Let's see how they're doing.
This is the wet market in Wuhan where COVID-19 was first identified earlier in the year. You can even see the sign now for the seafood market. During lockdown, the city of Wuhan was almost empty on the streets, at public spaces. The city of Wuhan has gradually resumed its vitality. People can come out and dine in these places. These are streets where people can go to eat in small restaurants, very popular before and now after the outbreak of COVID-19. Life goes on. Every morning, people in the communities go to eat breakfast at these restaurants with their friends and families. Wuhan and the province of Hubei are one of the most fertile places where crops are grown. Farmers are harvesting what they have toiled for the most part of the year, and they are looking forward to a good year in 2021.
Clearly, the pandemic has been felt hard in cities around the world, not only in Wuhan. Yet it's also presented opportunities to build back better. To discuss why cities are where transformative change begins, we have Mark Watts calling in. Mark is the Executive Director of C40 Cities, an organization created and led by cities focused on tackling climate change. Mark, tell us, how are C40 Cities, a network of 97 megacities, working to rebuild economies?
Well, our overriding focus has been for cities to really lead the charge to deliver that Paris Agreement, to slash global greenhouse gas emissions. But in the context of where we're at the moment with COVID, what that means is making sure, first of all, that we protect citizens, overcome this health crisis, but then as we recover from it, we take the opportunity to do it in a really green way. Put all that massive public investment that's happening at the moment to help people get back into work, to protect people's health, as an opportunity to launch the new zero emissions economy of the future that we need. And what we can see working across our cities is if we do that big, decisive green stimulus now, we can stay under that terrible 1.5 degree target that we have to achieve. But if we don't, if we carry on as we are business as usual, we're going to miss that chance forever.
Urban food systems important to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement?
Yeah, I mean, as you've said already in your report, food is critical in terms of looking at global emissions, but particularly in terms of city emissions. So food systems, generally globally, a quarter of all greenhouse gas emissions, really driving that global climate emergency. But whereas people generally think about food as an issue of the rural hinterlands where there's big agriculture, actually, of course, it's in the cities where we consume the product of that rural economy. 13% of C40 cities, the big cities of the world's emissions, are related to food. And without really substantial changes in the way that we produce, we transport, and we consume and dispose of food, what we can see is a trend of ever-increasing greenhouse gas emissions from food, increasing 40% over the next few decades to 2050.
Thank you so much for your insights on that. But first, before we continue with the discussion, let's take a closer look into how one of the C40 cities, Quezon City in the Philippines, is building back better.
Our greetings from Quezon City, Philippines comes with sincere wishes for everyone's safety. While we are living with the hope that the global health crisis will end soon, we Filipinos are counting on our resiliency as a country to overcome the challenges of these unprecedented times. When our first COVID positive case in Quezon City was confirmed in March 9, the city government began mobilizing various efforts to ensure the health and safety of our millions of residents. One of our foremost concerns was ensuring that the families in our communities have sufficient supplies of food, and this was a monumental task. We, along with other LGUs in our own areas, provided food relief packs, but these were mostly composed of rice, canned goods. With vegetables in short supply, we thought of empowering our residents to plant their own sources of good nutrition. This initiative has its roots from our Joy of Urban Farming program, which has been running for more than 10 years. The beauty of urban agriculture is that it not only addresses hunger issues, but it has brought communities closer together. In partnership with our Department of Agriculture, the Quezon City Food Security Task Force has initiated its Grow QC campaign. Aside from urban gardens, other Grow QC action plans are: number 1, the establishment of community soup kitchens; number 2, vegetable nurseries; and number 3, the introduction of aquaponic technologies as an alternative livelihood for our people. We aim to be a truly green city, one that also fosters stronger community growth and development. We have also distributed electronic tricycles, or e-trikes, as a replacement to the community tricycles. We have banned the use of single-use plastics since last year, and this is now inculcated in our residents' mindsets. Since Quezon City is blessed with verdant green spaces, we aim to expand and improve these areas by creating more green belts. We will remain steadfast in our commitment to achieve more for a healthier Quezon City.
Before the pandemic hit, Quezon City had already taken an important step by becoming a signatory of the Good Food Cities Declaration. Mark, can you tell us what this commitment is about?
Yeah, it's a science-based target. 14 leading mayors have committed to working with their cities to achieve the EAT-Lancet planetary health diet for all of their citizens by 2030, so in the next 10 years. So balanced, nutritious diet reflective of the culture and geography of their citizens, and using their procurement powers, supporting urban farming, as we heard there, and cutting food waste in half.
Thank you for that overview. And to conclude, what is your vision for the future of urban food and climate?
Just that all citizens have access to food that is good for them, good for the planet, cheaply and locally available, and that we see what happens in big cities spread all around the world.
Mark Watt, thank you so much for your great contribution to this conversation. As we see, cities around the world are already stepping up and taking action. 2 milestones were recently met when 14 mayors committed to ambitious food systems targets under the C40 Good Cities Declaration. Milan, Barcelona and Los Angeles are leading cities in the urban food agenda, all working under the framework of the Good Food Cities Declaration. We asked their mayors to tell us how they're using food as a tool for change. Let's hear what they said.
As mayor of Milan and chair of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, I am very proud of the work cities are doing under the C40 Good Food Cities Declaration. We have increased local action to achieve a planetary health diet for all citizens by 2030. In my city, the Municipal Agency for Schools Canteens has developed new menus for children by reducing red meat and promoting plant-based food. This has cut CO2 emissions from schools' canteen by 20% since the launch of our food policy in 2015. If more cities around the world transform their urban food policy management along the planetary health diet, we could greatly accelerate our progress toward the Sustainable Development Goals.
Desde Barcelona estamos comprometidos con el derecho a una alimentación saludable, justa y sostenible. Por ello impulsamos políticas de ciudad. Desde hace años trabajamos con la restauración, con los mercados, trabajamos con las escuelas, con los hospitales. Queremos trabajar también con todos los productores de proximidad de nuestro territorio cercano, porque queremos hacer un salto adelante en estas políticas de la alimentación que han estado muy apartadas de la agenda pública principal de las políticas públicas y que nosotros queremos situar en el centro, porque hay que garantizar el derecho a una alimentación saludable a toda la ciudadanía y porque el planeta ya no puede más y necesita que cambiemos radicalmente un sistema industrial global que está generando desigualdad, que está generando injusticia y que está poniendo la vida en peligro. Barcelona está comprometida con la vida y por ello os invitamos también a participar de la capitalidad de la alimentación sostenible que tendremos en 2021.
Hi, I'm Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, and I also proudly serve as chair of C40 Cities. A year ago, Los Angeles joined 13 other cities in signing C40's Good Food City Declaration, committing ourselves to sustainable food system policies that address our global climate emergency. You see, food sustainability is central to LA's Green New Deal, and though COVID-19 has changed so many things, our commitment to climate action and equity has not wavered. During this unprecedented time, we've seen partners from every sector step up to expand our efforts to feed those most in need, decreasing food waste, and ensuring edible food is diverted to our most vulnerable neighborhoods. And since the pandemic began, we've delivered more than 5 million meals to seniors and people with disabilities. We're increasing urban gardens at our parks and at our libraries. All of this is good for the health of our planet, our communities, and our people. And it moves us closer to the goal of a healthier, fairer, and more resilient Los Angeles.
So far, we've taken a look at urban food systems from a climate angle. But what about adding a health perspective? Today, we have Niels Lundt joining us. Niels is the Vice President of Global Prevention and Health Promotion at Novo Nordisk, a global healthcare company. Here, he leads the Global Cities Changing Diabetes Partnership Program, which includes more than 25 major cities worldwide. Niels, why are cities important in the fight against increasing trends of diet-related diseases?
Cities are places where we see innovation and growth, but there's also a flip side to this economic growth, and that is obesity and diabetes. And right now, little more than half the world's population live in cities, but already now 2 out of 3 people with diabetes live in cities, and that proportion is expected to grow over the next couple of decades. And so why is that? I said it was a flip side of economic growth, but we see in cities that when we have economic growth, growing prosperity, we also see a move to more sedentary lifestyles. So it's the way that we live, eat, transport ourselves that influences our risk of diabetes, and that is high in urban settings.
Why is Novo Nordisk working with cities on prevention?
Over the past 20 years, diabetes prevalence has more than doubled in the world, and the trajectory is continuing upwards. So the societal challenge is twofold. We need to take care of the people who already have the disease. We all typically do that inside the healthcare system, but we also need to look at how we can bend the curve so that fewer people ultimately get diabetes. We believe that the solution to prevention lies in cities, and that is actually mostly outside the healthcare system. And this must be done by addressing one of the key modifiable risks for diabetes, and that is overweight and obesity. And obviously, for overweight and obesity, food is important, and that is why we're working with EAT and others to see how we can design healthy food environments that can also prevent disease.
Can you tell us about the Cities Changing Diabetes initiative?
Cities Change Diabetes was established in 2014, 6 years ago, and now has more than 30 cities as part of the network. I think one of the reasons why it has been successful is that it puts a spotlight on vulnerability. What is it in each of those cities or municipalities? What is it that really drives risk of diabetes? Is it the way that we live? Is it the cultures that we have? Is it isolation? Is it mistrust in formal health systems? Or what is the local condition here? And here we work with cities in a map, share, act in a very systematic process, but in a way where solutions become local, where coalitions of local stakeholders, public sector, private sector, and civil society organizations come around to actually finding what the best solution is in this particular city. And I think that's why we've seen the program grow and some solutions being made into policies and good experiences being shared between cities around the world.
So what is your vision for the future of urban food and health?
I sincerely hope that we can find solutions to creating healthy food systems for the most vulnerable in cities. This will require collaboration between community organizations, families, private sector, for example, retailers, public sector, city planners, academia, and others. I think this is difficult because it requires collaboration between people and organizations that usually don't, and sometimes are quite skeptical of each other. I think EAT provides a meeting ground for these types of dialogues and partnerships here, so that's why we are part of this dialogue. But I think if we're successful in building bridges between people who typically don't work with each other, we can probably find a way to addressing health inequity.
Niels, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your insights and perspectives. Have you ever thought about how the design of your city influences what you eat? Well, let's have a look.
What's important to them when they're making a decision about the food that they eat? That's the big question.
Shifting Urban Diets is a 3-year initiative working to transform global synthesis science on healthy and sustainable food systems to the city context. We're doing this by establishing science-based targets for local food systems focused on the climate impact, reshaping neighborhood food environments, looking at grocery stores, physical surroundings, street vendors, and though the content is Copenhagen specific, we're working to make sure the approaches and methods can be easily applied in other cities around the world.
So the project that we're doing here in Copenhagen is creating a series of pilot projects, trying to understand these mechanisms behind how young people eat, truly understanding what's important to them when they're making a decision about the food that they eat. How can we shift a young person's diet? And then, of course, how can you kind of scale up that understanding of shifting diets to other demographic groups as well? If we bring citizens, decision makers, city officials, and industry leaders together, we really believe that together, through sharing knowledge and acting urgently, that we can create cities that are not only healthy for the people living in them, but equitable places to live.
As we've seen in Copenhagen, how our cities are designed influences what we eat. Shortly, we'll find out from our youngest citizens how they experience this. But first, we'll hear from UNICEF's Executive Director, Henrietta Ford, on what actions they see as urgent to address amidst a global pandemic.
On behalf of everyone at UNICEF, greetings to all of you participating in this year's meeting. Eat at Home is a chance to discuss our progress on one of the most fundamental issues for children: nutrition and food security. Over the last 2 decades, the global community has made historic progress. Together, we've reduced the prevalence of child stunting by 1/3. 55 million fewer children were undernourished this last year compared to 20 years before. And 20% more infants are now exclusively breastfed compared to 2005. In short, change for nutrition is possible, and it's happening at scale. But we must do more. 1 in 3 of the world's children under the age of 5 is malnourished, and 2 in 3 are not getting the diverse diet they need to grow and develop. For example, we're seeing an alarming rise in the number of overweight and obese children. One reason why is urbanization. In recent years, millions of families have left the countryside and moved to cities. Poverty, inequality, and the increasing cost of healthy diets mean that many of these families are changing the way they eat or feed their children. As a result, cities have become a hotbed of malnutrition concerns. Often within the same community, stunting, micronutrient deficiencies, and overweight and obesity go hand in hand. And it will only get worse, with populations becoming more urbanized and younger as the years go by. All of these challenges are compounded by COVID-19. Rising poverty is making it harder for families to access nutritious food. Social protection systems are being strained, and school and transportation system closures and lockdowns are taking a toll. At the same time, we know what works. When governments invest in good nutrition and the systems that support it, the food system, the health, the education, and social protection systems, children's nutrition dramatically improves. So today, UNICEF is calling for action in 2 key areas. First, we must support cities and local governments to improve people's access to sustainable food and diets. The public and private sectors, along with partners like EAT, must join forces to find innovative new ways to finance and strengthen local food and transportation systems, to bring nutritious food closer to where people live, and to make it affordable and available to all. And second, we need to work directly with children and young people to listen to their concerns about food and nutrition, and to help them and their families make better food choices that will support their growth and development over the long term. Next year's Global Food Systems Summit, led by the United Nations Secretary General, is a critical moment for action. Together, we must put new systems in place that can ensure that every child, young person, and family in every community has sustainable and affordable access to safe and nutritious food. UNICEF stands ready to work with governments, cities, and young people, and our partners at EAT in the United Nations, the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, civil society, academia, and the private sector. Together, let's reimagine a future in which good nutrition is not a distant dream, but a daily reality. Thank you.
It's now time to turn to the Fab Lab and see what our resident scientist has been cooking up in his home-confined lab. Over to you, Professor Fabrice.
Hi folks, welcome to the Fab Lab. Today we're going to talk about why a plant-rich diet is protective to our health.
If you're a plant, you can't carry your young to safety, or in this case, your daughter to the bus stop.
Seriously, Dad?
If you're a plant, you can't run away from predators. like this little guy. Get out of here, Wasabi. Unlike animals who rely on speed, strength, or stealth to survive,
with nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, plants have had to rely on chemistry to survive.
For more than 500 million years, plants have been locked in competition with other plants for limited resources and duking it out with their pests and using chemical warfare. This is the source of most of our nutrition and much of our flavor. Plants have had to convince others to carry their young for them, like in this tasty squash. The greens of this parsley and the skin of this apple are both full of antioxidants, which serves as an armor or like a sunblock. If you open your spice drawer, you're going to find rosemary, cinnamon, bay, and tons of other spices to enrich your flavors. Each of these is a unique chemical compound that was developed by this plant to keep pests at bay. Get it? Keep pests at bay? This onion has two different chemicals separating two cells. When we bite into it, we mix those two cells, which is the source of that pungent flavor. So cool. So dig in, eat your colors, because diversity verily is the spice of life. No food was wasted in the making of this video.
So what, we go Mackey's or chicken shop? The ultimate question amongst a group of friends going out. Ironic, because the two are variations of the same, both deep-fried junk, just under a different name. In a world full of choices, it seems we don't have many. Can't have nice food without spending a pretty penny. And that's the pretty price that many can't afford. We'd rather that 99p option on the billboard. Speaking of advertising, I really wonder why they use cartoons to catch my little sister's eye. Using kids to sell products, how can you justify sacrificing our health for your wealth? This has to be rectified. This isn't just one instance, it happens all over the scene. Young people's health is on the line, from London to Aberdeen. Whether it be supermarket shelves or school canteens, we deserve better. We cannot live by these means. It's about time the food industry put our well-being first. I don't want diabetes, obesity, or anything worse. It's frightening that junk food is our automatic reaction. When we're feeling hungry, this needs direct action. We're already worrying about racial justice and the Earth's condition, yet we still have to fight for a fairer food system.
That was a powerful message. And it's clear that our food systems are failing our youth. So before we go into a discussion on system solutions to fix this, let's take a look at the solutions on our plate. We've been so lucky to get one of Scandinavia's leading young voices in food to be our studio chef here at Eat at Home. Emilie Nereng is a Norwegian nutritionist, influencer, and author. Emilie, what do you think of the challenges Christina brings up in her poem?
Wow, I must say that Christina's words really hit me, because I can absolutely relate. As a young person, you're constantly bombarded by information and marketing from big food companies, so it can be really difficult to know what kinds of food that are actually good for us and the planet. So that's why I made it sort of my mission to show that sustainable and healthy food is neither boring or time-consuming. So today, I will show you how to make something that goes even quicker than ordering takeaway. I'll be making a bean burrito that is packed with so much flavor and best of all, so many nutrients that are good for us. So thank you, Natalie, for having me.
As the next generation of leaders, today's children and youth have a central role to play in building healthier and sustainable food environments. In today's broadcast, you'll hear from a collection of inspiring youth that are already taking the lead. Tasha, we are so lucky to have you join us here at Eat at Home. My first question to you. What was the turning point that made you realize this is an issue and got you so engaged?
So I think the turning point for me that encouraged me to get involved in food activism was when I changed my diet to a pescatarian diet. So all my life growing up, my diet was, consisted of meats and fruit and vegetables, like any, average person's diet. And I didn't realize that there was a lack of options available for any person that perhaps has different dietary requirements. So once I switched my diet and I realized my high street only offered, your chicken and chips and offered, your beef burgers, and I couldn't eat any of that, I realized that actually there is perhaps something here that isn't quite right. And I think on top of that, I volunteered as an assistant to the Director of Public Health in my local borough. And at the time, the sugar tax was being introduced here in the UK, and there was a lot of discussion about child obesity, the epidemic, and how we can solve it. And that's when I kind of started to observe my food environment, the different ways in which our environment shapes the kind of food that we eat and the kind of food that we have that is accessible to us.
Tasha, thank you for such a powerful perspective. I want to continue that discussion with you, but first let's see a special report from a brave young person struggling with a food system rigged against him and his peers.
Welcome to the heart of Leicester. I'm at Clock Tower right now, where all the young people chill, they come to relax. So I'm going to feel like a flight attendant now. We have Five Guys over here, we have KFC there, we have Burger King right over there. The high street's flooded with unhealthy options, and no healthy option is in the spotlight for young people. And we need to make sure that there's a fair place to play and a fair place to eat.
Tell me why young people make things like these campaigns work. Why not just adults in positions of power?
Young people have lived experiences of being used by the food industry. A young person who's sitting there and has no say in his life or her life whatsoever could have the most credibility to go out there and trying to make a change and trying to influence someone to actually know about what they're eating, so that when they leave school and they see that chicken shop in the first 400 yards of that school, it's not going to be their stomach talking, it's going to be their mind. I've never actually seen an advertisement promoting healthy food for young people. I've only ever seen it with unhealthy fast food high street stores.
Wow, that's a powerful video. Tasha, how do you feel that marketing influences you and your peers' food choices?
I think the role that marketing plays in our food choices is a huge role. Companies don't spend millions and millions of pounds on advertising for no reason. It's because that they know it works. And so when advertisements are constantly bombarding young people with fast food options and foods that are high in fat and salt and sugar, when we do go out to restaurants or we go out to socialize with our friends, we're heavily influenced by what we have seen. And we also have to look at how companies have taken that advertising onto social media. And we know that young people spend a lot of time on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, all these platforms. And especially with COVID-19 and the impact that's had, we now spend a lot longer in front of our screens. And so that constant messaging of, we should be eating your burgers, your fries, and all the foods, it really does take away real choice when it comes to what options we have and what we decide to eat in our daily lives.
Tasha, thank you for those insights. Now, in this picture, where do you feel policymakers have failed?
Where policymakers have failed for me is they have failed to really listen to the voices of young people. For decades, food activists have been pushing for a healthier system, a system that promotes the health and well-being of young people, that puts health at the forefront of its operations next to profit. And I think we have neglected, or policymakers have neglected, the impact of health on young people and our lives. So, we've had multiple obesity strategies being proposed by various governments over the last couple of years, over the last couple of decades, and nothing has really been implemented. It has just been empty words and no manifestation of what they have promised. So policymakers have been really good at just, giving us what we want to hear, telling us what we want to hear, but really it's been no action And that has really impacted, you know, the way that young people experience our food environment. And I think on top of that, we've had loads of conversations about the obesity epidemic, and none of it has included young people. And what I find really bizarre is we have all these grown-up adults talking about young people, and yet there is not a single young person's voice being represented. So they have not been included in the discussions or invited to the tables to really talk about the unique experiences of young people when it comes to how they experience their food environment.
Tasha, you make such an important point. Now, if you could ask food and beverage companies to do one thing differently with their marketing practices, what would it be?
For me, I think right now companies are bending the truth about what is inside their products. And it's a tactic that they use to sell us more and make us think that something is healthy when it's not. I think it's misleading and it's unethical. So for me, my one ask for these companies and beverage companies as well is that they need to be honest about what is inside their foods through the labels that they use. Be very honest and transparent and clear about what is it that your product contains and the implications of consuming that product, the amount of salt, sugar that is in that product, all of these information that makes consumer choices a lot easier for when it comes to what they decide to eat.
Tasha, thank you so much for your insights and giving us a perspective on the voice of the youth. Thank you for joining us here for this episode of Eat at Home.
Thank you so much for having me.
After that conversation, it's clear to me that the youth deserve a voice when it comes to developing food policies. To make sure the youth literally have a seat at the table, EAT is involved in the Co-Create project, a huge Europe-wide project to educate and empower youth to take part in creating policies that will help address the growing overweight and obesity crisis faced by youth. Today, on behalf of all the Co-Create youth, Pedro, Mafalda, Tale and Zuza are launching the Youth Declaration, a statement outlining their demands to our political leaders across Europe. Let's hear what they're demanding.
Hi, my name is Mafalda.
Susanna Bożynska.
Tale Lion.
Pedro. I joined the Co-Create Youth Declaration Task Force project to share my knowledge about healthy and good nutrition.
Something that would have a positive impact in the lives of so many teens.
Making a change in the world.
Children eat poorly and practice less sports.
Obesity among children and adolescents needs to be taken seriously.
Our generation is a lot more vulnerable to diseases such as cancer, diabetes, and a lot of cardiovascular diseases.
Our declaration brings up 4 topics that we consider fundamental to improve the situation.
Stopping all marketing of unhealthy foods towards children.
Nutritional education and healthy school cafeteria.
Implement sugar-sweetened beverage taxes.
Start offering at least once a week physical activities to children and teens. It's important to say that we aren't addressing individuals but policymakers. We have the ideas, but you have the power and we need your help to implement them.
Your actions are affecting many lives and it's time for you to make a change.
It's high time we did something. Let's do this together.
Listen to us and give us the voice we need.
The sooner you take responsibility and act, the sooner we can make a change in eyes of a healthier society and a brighter future.
The time to act is now.
Well, that's a strong message and very clear. It's not only the youth who are stepping up to demand action on food. Earlier today, I sat down with Dr. Gunhild Stordalen, EAT's founder and executive chair, for an exciting conversation. Let's have a look. Gunhild, I was wondering if we could start the conversation here. On the end point of the goal that we are all working towards, what is the food system of your dreams?
I love that you're starting out on a positive note, Natalie. So I think most people would agree that the food system we want is one that delivers healthy, safe and nutritious foods to everybody, everywhere, and do so in a way that protects nature and ensures a decent income for farmers and food producers along the value chain. And the good news is that the science now shows that it is possible. In fact, if we get it right on food, food can be the most powerful medicine to improve the health of people and planet, even as the population grows to 10 billion. But to get there, we need to do a couple of critical things. I mean, first, we need to shift what we produce and start growing a diversity of nutritious crops that we can eat directly. Because despite that there's more than 50,000 edible plants in the world, 60% of our energy comes from 3 crops only, corn, rice and wheat, and a lot of that goes to feeding our animals to produce meat or going to biofuel. Second, we need to shift to a way of growing food that protects and even regenerates nature and fights global warming, in a way that ensures that farmers, fisherfolks and other food producers a decent living, because they must be viewed as providing us a public good. As much as they are feeding us, they have the capacity to capture and store carbon from the atmosphere, reverse biodiversity loss, and to also massively lower public spending on healthcare by providing foods that keep people healthy. I mean, like vegetables, legumes, nuts, and fruits. And last but not least, today, 1/3 of everything we produce is lost or wasted. So we need something like a truly circular revolution along the entire value chain, making food loss and waste a thing of the past.
We've often heard you talk about the magic of the table, Gunhild, and that has often been your role in this. Why, for you, is it important to bring diverse voices around the table, to have a conversation, to share a meal, and to be part of the summit?
Well, our dysfunctional food system, I mean, where we are today, is caused by siloed thinking and siloed action for decades. For example, for too long, we have been thinking of how agriculture can increase GDP and create jobs, but not really serve its main function, which is to feed people healthily and do so in a sustainable way. And as a result of that, $700 billion of US in public agricultural subsidies go to support the production of just a few monocrops. Much of that goes to feed animals or to biofuel or the cheap ingredients in junk food. So we literally today subsidize what makes people sick and destroying our planet. So now we have the science to say that what's good for people tend to be better for the planet and vice versa. And that we can actually feed everyone enough healthy food, we can create new jobs and improve the lives of farmers while protecting the planet. But to do so, we need to see the big picture and we need to break down these silos. And of course, there are some trade-offs that we have to navigate. And last but not least, we have to work together, we have to collaborate. So we are all part of the food system, and so we all must come together to bring about that huge transformation that the world needs. So that is why it's so important to bring everybody around the table. And I'm going to bring up a Norwegian phrase that I've pointed to before, which is dugnad. And dugnad means coming together for the greater goods, everyone bringing their ideas and the tools that they muster. And we need something like a global dugnad now towards fixing food. And I think the UN Food Systems Summit is such a kickstart to this dugnad, bottom up and, of course, top down.
When you look out across the spectrum of food-related challenges, what are the ones that infuriate you most or drive you most crazy, or the ones that you most think should be changed?
Well, there is much about our food system that should drive us mad, seriously. I mean, the fact that we produce more than enough calories to feed the world, but we waste 1/3, and that 3 billion people cannot afford a healthy diet is nothing but a massive tragedy. And at the same time, hunger is on the rise and obesity is skyrocketing, even amongst kids. And today, bad diets are killing more people than alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and unsafe sex combined. And for many, what is available out there and most convenient is junk food that is making people sick. And it's absurd for developing countries to adopt the worst practices of the West, importing such unhealthy diets. So this is a testament to the messed up dynamics in our food system that have to come to pass. And the right, healthy choice must be available and affordable, both in developed and developing countries. And the lifestyle-related diseases that unhealthy food brings creates really an unbearable cost for what we think of as cheap food. I mean, we talk about a price on carbon, but we must start talking about correctly pricing food, or the true cost of food. It's not even only about our health, it's also about the damage to our climate and to nature as a whole. And today, food systems create, in fact, more economic damage than what they generate in value. So when we measure the true cost of food, we see that in economic terms, society as a whole loses $2 trillion, which is an astounding number every year. And of course, this needs correcting.
How can consumers help to fix food?
Well, that is a really important question, Natalie, because the food we are putting on our plates every day is actually the most important decision we are making for our health and for the planet in our everyday lives. And for all of us who have a choice, it's actually pretty simple. It's about eating real food, not too much, mostly plants, and of course, waste nothing. And in addition, it's important to demand change from governments and from food industry, so make your voice heard.
With me now, as we get close to ending the first episode of Eat at Home, are three people with unique perspectives to offer when we speak to the importance of fixing food. First, Sam, former White House chef and senior policy advisor for nutrition during the Obama years. Second, Victoria, food transformation lead at World Benchmarking Alliance. And Lana, vice chair of the action track for shifting to sustainable consumption patterns for the UN Food Systems Summit and a respected youth climate activist at 0 Hour International. Welcome. Sam, to you first. What are your thoughts about the role of young people and our cities in driving change and particularly changing the future of food?
Yeah, so I mean, they're absolutely core to the future. If we talk a lot about, you know, sustainable agriculture, regenerative agriculture, but if we don't have sustainable eating and climate smart eating, we'll never be able to put the two pieces of the puzzle together and drive the change we need. So I think first and foremost, just as shapers of culture, really helping to embed the core values around health, sustainability, and everything that we're eating is a huge driving force that youth are doing right now, just in the daily decisions they make and what they're telling us is cool and not cool. And I think increasingly, though, it's going to be as policymakers, as entrepreneurs who are starting businesses. I'm seeing it every day. Young people just taking ownership of this issue and deciding like we're going to solve it. Enough of the debate. We need solutions. So I think. I don't think it absolves, old guys like myself from responsibility for fixing the problem, but ultimately it's young people who are really going to drive us to where we need to go.
And Lana, as a youth activist, what do you see happening out there?
So out there is a powerful and growing youth movement. Young people are doing the work every day for a healthier world and for sustainable food systems. However, what I'm also seeing is that the growth, popularity, and mainstreaming of our youth movement has not yet translated into the action that we need in our societies. So far, we're not on track to meet, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals or the Paris Climate Agreement. So while young people are rising up and becoming active like never before, we really need the world to meet us halfway with the action.
Thank you for that perspective, Lana. Victoria, you work for an organization trying to drive change in and by the private sector. Do you think consumer pressure and citizen mobilization actually have an effect on business policy?
Well, absolutely. Consumer pressure is really crucial in driving this. And probably because we have access to so much information these days. Also, our data at the World Benchmarking Alliance is free and available for everyone. But it's not enough just to have an opinion. As Lana said, we need to put it into action. We need to put our convictions on our diets, and we need to vote with our diets, because literally each meal contributes to how our future will look like.
Victoria, thank you. Lana, back to you. What are the three things you believe policymakers or businesses should do to involve more youth?
First, I would say to follow the example of the UN Food Systems Summit and integrate youth into your leadership and decision-making structure. With the UN Food Systems Summit, every action track has a vice chair who is a young person. And I think this is a great example of what meaningful youth engagement looks like. Second, stop targeting unhealthy marketing to children and youth, and don't make our rights to healthy food and a future in a livable climate about politics. And third, take concrete action that will meaningfully bring us toward a sustainable future, whether in business or in policy. Uplift healthy, plant-forward diets, cut food waste and packaging waste, cut greenhouse gas emissions, and cut investment in any other financial resources in fossil fuels.
Lana, thank you for those powerful thoughts. Now I have a question, the same question for each of you. Sam, what about yourself? What one thing could you potentially do, let's say tomorrow, to help the shift to more sustainable consumption?
Well, I mean, the obvious one is I'm a chef, and I still, eat probably more meat than I would like, although I've dramatically reduced it. So I'm going to continue to work on that. And then, I think making sure our voices are heard, both in our policy and our politics, to make sure we're driving much bigger change through our system is the other big piece that I have to do.
Sam, thank you for that input. Victoria, what about yourself? What one thing could you potentially do tomorrow to help the shift to more sustainable consumption?
Well, Natalie, the team and I are working around the clock to finalize our research of 350 of the biggest food and agriculture companies. We're assessing them on environment, social justice, and of course their contribution to healthy and sustainable diets. And I'm really excited to share that we will launch our key findings during an EAT at Home side event on December 16th. So I'm encouraging all the viewers today to register and join the conversation, because to be honest, I was very shocked and quite concerned about the data. And we need to really come together and make sure to turn the tide.
Lana, what thing could you potentially do tomorrow to help the shift towards more sustainable consumption?
So I'm already involved in eating more healthy and climate-friendly in my efforts, and I'm also involved in advocacy. What I could do is talk more to my friends, family, and community about what I am doing and start talking about these issues, because we really need everyone involved in the shift to healthier, more climate-friendly diets.
Lana, Victoria, and Sam, thank you so much for your powerful insights and sharing your perspectives. It's been great having you on the show, Sam, especially you. I know it's practically the middle of the night where you are, but thank you for joining us at EAT at Home.
So my goal with this recipe was to show you something that you can cook that is even quicker than ordering takeaway. So I'll be making a bean burrito that is as quick as that after-school burrito kebab thing that many orders, but this is so much sustainable and healthier for you. So let's get started. We're going to make my Tex-Mex 5-minute burrito. And in this recipe, we're using cooked beans. And just use whatever bean that is available in your country and in your local store. So we're just adding 200 grams of cooked beans into a pan, along with 3 tablespoons of a store-bought taco spice mix. And you can, of course, make your own spice mix, but then the recipe wouldn't be as quick as this one. And then I'm adding about a cup of water. And then we're just going to let that simmer for 5 minutes, and then we will have this amazing bean paste. And it is actually that easy. Just spices, beans, and water, no oils. And while that is cooking, you just chop up some fresh veggies. And now I'm going to show you how you can create a super easy, healthier dressing. So here I have about 2 to 3 tablespoons of a light sour cream, and you can also use Greek yogurt, and a vegan mayo is also perfect for this recipe. And then you just add a dash of sriracha, as much as you can handle, because it's quite spicy. And then you just combine it together. And that's it. It's actually this easy. So now I'm going to assemble my burrito. So here I have a pre-warmed wholemeal tortilla. And then I'm going to top it off with a generous amount of chickpea hummus. I've already made this, but you can also use a store-bought or make your own. So we're just adding that to the center of the tortilla. And then you add the beans on top of this. Oops. And don't be worried about overfilling it. I always do it, but it still tastes so delicious. And then I'm going to add some fresh veggies. And I really, really love to use Chinese cabbage here, because that's what they also use in kebabs. So it has amazing taste. And then, in the end, I'm going to top it off with the dressing we just made. So just spread it on. And I can already see that I will have trouble by closing this, but I will try. And now we just fold in the ends as a burrito. Like, oh, okay, one more time. Like this, and like this. Okay, I totally overfilled it. The taste is still great. And now I'm going to show you how amazing this looks inside. And just look at this. And if you're feeling fancy, you can just top it off with some cilantro or something. But that's just to be fancy. And there you go. Here we have a 5-minute bean burrito that is sustainable, delicious, healthy, quick, and also very cheap to make. So I'm just looking so forward to eating this afterwards. We are using the Eat at Home series to explore different angles of the global food system. So over the next episodes, I will speak to several chefs, coming from different food cultures, all working every day to make healthy and sustainable food delicious. Many of them are working with the Chef's Manifesto, a network of chefs from 77 countries driving progress on the food issues that matters. Today, as we speak about healthy food for the younger generation, we have on the line Chef Arthur Potts from England. So hey, Arthur.
Hi, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm doing well, thank you. So, what's your best advice on how to get kids and youth to eat healthy?
Well, one of the most important things to do is to make sure that we have the children understand better what's good for them. So many of the teachers and parents tend to be going through the old processes of, rudimentary food education in schools, meals at home, a little bit more basic, founded on supermarket advice and advice from perhaps their parents' generation. So we need to be looking at education on food safety. We talk about food safety, but safe means that we need to stop being dangerous with our food, because if we're eating too much fat, too much sugar, and too much fried food, we are putting a heavy toll on our dental, on our obesity levels, on our diabetic levels, and our kids are getting fatter and unhealthier because of the foods they're eating. So we need to have healthy diets that are safe. And to do that, we need tools to raise awareness of what a nutritious meal looks like. So we should be using modern tech. Children are so clued up on technology. So we need to be using tech to build these stories of what a colourful plate of food is, why that's healthy, and use these tools to talk about nutrition. But we need nutrition to be cool. We need it to be cool in school. We need the kids to understand it's their bodies, it's their future, and they need to be pressuring back at their parents or their schools saying, hey, why are you not putting nutritious food on my plate? And as chefs and as adults, supposedly, we need to be showing best practice. We need to be sharing stories of what we've learned from the past, what successes we have, but also what failures we have. Why is a population and our children getting bigger? In the West, we're almost malnourished because of the food that we're feeding our children is too sugary, too fatty, too processed. But you see, we need to make good food affordable. Unfortunately, good food is not always a choice. The children are leaving school after having a panini or a really bad pizza. They're going walking home down the high street, seeing the KFCs, the McDonald's, the Burger Kings, the Subways. I mean, they're seeing it's just in front of them constantly. They go out shopping with their parents. It's there all the time. So we're not able to give our children a choice. And we can't compete with these fast food outlets who make food fast and cheap. So we need to make good food accessible. So we need to be more radical in the way we look at fresh and healthy food. We need to make it more accessible. We need to make it cool. And we need to make sure that the food we are feeding our children is able to support their growing bodies and their growing minds. So, I'd say we need to make good food cool in school. And we need to make good food available for all. We need to be putting love into the food of the future. So we need to love our children's food. And we need to make sure that it's nutritious. So we need to love flavour, we need to love colour, we need to love people and the children on this planet. Good food's all about love, right?
Oh, I totally agree with you. So what is your favorite suggestion for a healthy, sustainable, quick meal for someone coming home from school, for example?
Yeah. Well, look, when the kids get back from school, they've been doing a lot of brain work, they've been doing a lot of physical activity too, but sometimes it's quite brain focused. So we need to be getting nutrients for the brain. So usually post-school, for my kids, it'll be a quick smoothie. And the kids can make this quickly. I'll be using a shelled hemp seeds, some banana, some oat milk, and probably some frozen berries like blueberries or cherries. And I'll put them all into a little Vitamix, just zip it up, and then they can take it up to their room or sit down at the dining table and just kick back for 30 minutes and just replenish what it is they need and get the digestions back on track. Because later, they should be having a plate of vegetables, maybe a small bit of vegetable protein or animal protein. But for me, when the kids get back from school, just give them a quick shake, something that's, that's easy to digest and to get into their bodies.
Yeah. Oh, and everybody loves smoothies. So, thank you so much, Arthur, for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
In January 2019, the EAT-Lancet report on healthy diets from sustainable food systems was launched to massive media attention. The report, authored by 37 world-leading scientists, was the first to outline a global reference diet for healthy humans on a healthy planet. The diet is known by many as the planetary health diet. It's represented by half a plate of fruits, vegetables and nuts. The other half consists primarily of whole grains, legumes, unsaturated plant oils, modest amounts of meat and dairy, and some added sugars and starchy vegetables. The diet is quite flexible, and it allows for the adaptation to dietary needs, personal preferences, and even cultural traditions. So as this is a global reference diet from a scientific report, the question is, how feasible is it to follow the diet in our own lives? Our next guest has done just that. Per, welcome.
Glad to be here.
You're head of sustainability at Coop, and you've decided to live on the EAT-Lancet reference diet for exactly half a year. Can you tell us why you decided to do that?
Mostly because people thought I was going to die, so it's kind of a motivation in itself. And I was more curious, I think, than some other people of what the diet actually consists of. You read the headlines and it all seems very hard. And, well, I'm not sure it is. So I decided to try, and, yeah, it was okay, yeah.
And you lived to tell the tale?
Yeah, I lived, yeah. Very important part, yeah.
So, Per, can you tell us, what was your diet like before this experiment?
Quite a lot of poultry or chicken for my part. Pretty much, and a bit embarrassed to say, but I don't think I've ever made dinner without meat ever before. It's a quite traditional Norwegian diet, but still, more modern than my mom and dad. But no, I've tried to make vegetarian alternatives, but I don't know, I just couldn't. So now I forced myself to, actually. Yeah.
Well, let's see how this went.
This is Per Loberg Eriksson, head of sustainability at Coop. He works every day for Coop to become more sustainable. And the question he asked himself is, how could he do a bit more? That's why, for 6 months, he decided to live on the EAT-Lancet reference diet, which meant changing his food consumption patterns to become more plant-based. In the beginning, it was a bit difficult socially. The EAT-Lancet reference diet can achieve healthy, sustainable diets for 10 billion people by 2050, while still protecting the environment. This is the first move towards setting a scientific way for how we must eat and how we have to produce our food if we're going to reach the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. Per went through medical tests showing he was healthy and had help from nutrition experts to ensure he was following the process in a safe, secure way. And during the 6 months, he went through different scenarios, like cooking the diet for a kindergarten with very positive feedback. And he felt that he'd evolved his cooking skills, having to think differently around food, also looking at the costs. Once he had understood how to shop with a new way of thinking, it turned out that it didn't become more costly than before. After 6 months on the EAT-Lancet reference diet, there were some things he decided to keep in his diet, and some things he changed back. But he also decided there was no reason for him to go back to the way he was eating before, just because he could. He's learned new habits, he feels well, and he also likes a few of the things he's learned to cook.
So here you are, alive and well.
Yep.
How did your friends and family react?
Well, I don't know. Some of them didn't care at all. Some of them asked questions, but I think like having it as a project made it a lot easier for them to I don't know, comprehend or to not to care too much, you know, because it all comes to an end. But yeah.
Everyone thought this is a vegan diet, but it's not, is it?
No, and I had to change less than I thought I'd have to, you know. So I've gone to the same stores. I've shopped all the products in our own range, and so you find the products wherever you go. And basically for me, you know, I had to get inspiration from other people learning how to cook new stuff, and so it's a lot more about me than the shop itself, you know.
So it's been quite a big step for you. What would you say is the most important message?
Well, it's all in our shops, you know. Just go there, try to find inspiration, and we'll try to help you find inspiration as well. And I think that's the core of it, really.
Well, thank you for this fascinating experiment. You have inspired many of us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's shift the focus to the business side of the food system. Why people eat what they eat is an important question to understand for any business in the food industry. To deepen that understanding, World Business Council for Sustainable Development, through their FRESH initiative, is exploring how companies can lead the shift towards healthy and sustainable options. Let's have a look at their approach.
Food is central to how we provide nourishment and nurture, but the way we eat is at times not good for our health. To understand more about what's driving our diets, we zoomed into homes across the UK following people as they planned, shopped and cooked. Here's what we found.
I don't have much of an imagination with cooking. I know people like to experiment. I'm a bit too scared to do that.
And the packaging is suggestive of the fact that chickens are outside of a, you know, there's chickens fluttering around in a field, but that's definitely not their free-range stuff.
I'm not very educated about when it comes to vegan food and sort of like flavours with regards to vegetables.
To find out how you can get close to consumers right now to understand what's really driving their dietary changes and potential areas of actions to shift consumer behaviours, go to wbcsd.org.
You can watch the full video at EAT's YouTube channel. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development will also organise a sequence of 3 interactive and high-profile eat-at-home side sessions in early December. Progressive businesses and other voices will highlight the intersections of food, agriculture and nature, with a strong focus on collective commitments, policy and science towards the UN Food Systems Summit in 2021. To learn more, go to eatforum.org. So, we are moving towards the end of the first episode of Eat at Home. What we've seen today is that the shift towards sustainable consumption is more pressing than ever. And now, from food for thought to food on the table. I'm looking forward to taste the food Emilia has prepared. Emilia, what do you think about today's episode? Was there anything that inspired you or surprised you?
I must say, it has been such an inspirational episode. But maybe what I found most inspiring was Christina's poem and to hear from Tasha, because they both address an issue that is so close to my heart as well. And I must say, it was so interesting to see the new footage from Wuhan, where this whole pandemic started. And I think the pandemic has really shown us how vulnerable the food systems is and how important it is that we live more intact with nature.
Emilie, thank you for a great perspective on that. Now, before we leave, I wanted to mention one thing. Eat at Home is more than these broadcasts. There'll be more than 15 affiliated side sessions over the next month. 2 of them this week, right after we turn off the lights here at 3:15 Central European Time. Food Shift 2030 will illustrate how citizen-driven innovation is shifting the way we produce and consume food. And on Thursday, November the 19th at 1500 Central European Time, the Collaborating Centre on Sustainable Consumption and Production explores the role of food retailers in enabling healthy and sustainable diets. Next week, the 50 by 40 Coalition organises a deep dive into the world of animal agriculture to sketch out what a just transition for this sector could look like. Check out the EAT website, newsletter and social media channels to register for these exciting virtual sessions. And stay tuned, as many more will be coming soon. OK, everyone, we're rounding up here. Now it's just for me to say thank you to all of you who followed the broadcast. Stay tuned for the next episode, where we'll meet farmers from around the world and focus on food production, which protects and restores nature. See you next time, and have a lovely rest of the day. Emilie, that looks so delicious.